I think they started in Killyman. The time that like Patrick took it over, there was, I think it was about 22 milkmen working from Killyman. And there's one man retiring this weekend, Norman Jennings, down at Macquarie. And I think that only leaves about 8 men left in Killyman. Out of 22. So there's a big drop. The people, like it was all swap work. Like there was no money passed. It was the neighbours all come, and they come to me whenever I was thrashing, and I'd go to them whenever they were thrashing, you see. And it was heavy work at the thrasher.
Well, that time, we all had to work that time. We all had to work at the farm. When I come home from, no matter what we were at, I'd come home and work on the farm. It was all manual labour that time. There wasn't much machinery. That time, the hay was all built in rocks, pulled in with the horses. When it comes to the winter time for the strawberries, where they dig all the strawberries, that was 5 acres where they dig every year. That was, I say, all manual labour. But we thought nothing of it. Thought nothing.
Well, to go back to early days, I suppose we never thought of doing anything else. I suppose all we wanted to do was to leave. All we wanted to do was to get away from school and drive tractors. And that's why I suppose we ended up and that is one of the reasons why we ended up farming. I suppose it was quite good. Even in early days it was all right. We seemed to enjoy it. Possibly if I'd lived my life over again, I'd just do the same. I would just do the same thing again. I suppose we just drifted into farming. I suppose it was just to stay at home to help the operation that was going on there till you eventually found that you were the one that was doing it. And that's, I suppose, how we just came into farming.
I was interested in horses from I was 7 or 8 years of age. My mother come from Donegal, and she worked a lot. All her people worked the horses.
I can't say I was overly fond of the work of the farm right enough. I thought it was very cold in the springtime, late evenings, sitting, in the yard, milking cows. But the cow was warm always, and you're nestled in against the side of the cow. But out in the bleak farmyard, I thought it was very cool, looking up at Venus or the starry skies, and or mixing potatoes in a pit in the autumn. Very cool potatoes, and your hands were freezing. So partly love and partly, just put up with it.
My grandfather worked the horses too. Years ago they had to go to Scotland for a living. And my grandfather went to Scotland, he broke in horses for Scotch farmers and so on like that. And I suppose maybe that's where I got the interest.
I would think the biggest social gathering whenever I was a child was Killyman Creamery. I started working there whenever I was 12 years of age and worked there during the summer holidays from the age of 12 until I left school at 16. And I remember the day I started, George Chambers was the boss then, and there was a lot of people working there. You know, there really was a lot of people. There might have been 400 people working in Killyman Creamery at that time. And that was a big social place. All the young kids gathered there, and I met so many people there, you know, throughout my teenage years, and everyone would come to the shop. And there was the meal store and the hardware, there was the grocery store, the cheese factory, the milk factory, you know, the milk processing plant. There was fertiliser coming in from Belfast every week, meal coming in a couple of times a week from Belfast. And that was serving the whole area. So everybody met there. And the crack was 90, I'll tell you that.
It was just the centre of attraction, particularly in the morning when people came in with their milk. You know, as a matter of fact, there was a lot of local people brought in their milk here themselves. It was a sort of self-carters, and they all met here in the store and spent a few minutes chatting, and away they went back home again.
It used to be, you know, you went there and it was a sort of a hub place and everybody met and congregated. That's all gone.
We know from records, for example, in 1902, that the creamery was taking in somewhere in the region of 500,000 gallons of milk per year. They actually were manufacturing almost 250,000 pounds of butter. Now, the creamery continued to flourish right through the war years, up to the Second World War when they got some new buildings created. Moving on into the 70s, for example, they had an apple juice plant created. But then from there on, things started to go downhill and the creamery went into decline.
I remember taking a walk lately over around Through Mount Road, and I came down one Saturday past the creamery with the dog, and it was as quiet as a graveyard. It really was. And like, I remember that place at 12:30 on a Saturday afternoon. It was thronged. You know, the people were just massing around it. The cars were queued up the road for petrol and supplies.
Oh, it's certainly missed now in the area.
It was actually built here to serve the town of Moy, and hence we get the name True and Moy, because the town land name here is True, and so the station became known as True and Moy. But I'm told that when the Ulster Railway was working here, that originally the station was just known as Moy, and a traveller from Belfast on arriving here from a train discovered that he was about 4 or 5 miles from Moy, and he took the company to court, and hence they had to call it then True and Moy, which covered their legal obligation to serve the town of Moy and also the townland of True.
The trains, I remember with great fondness as a child growing up, because when you're working in the fields at hay time or potato time, you could have set your watch, as it were, to them. When your mother told you to come home for your lunch or come home for your tea, you knew exactly what time to come. I remember that there's a train at 12 o'clock, there's one at 3, there's one at 20 to 5, there's one at 5 to 6 and one at 5 past 6, so you couldn't go wrong.
It was an act of sacrilege that a railway line which was so important should have been dismissed so easily. The wrecking trains moved in, they left the track, it didn't get a second chance. It would have got a second chance had the tracks have been left there.
The lawn around here is not so good. It's heavy lawn, heavy clay lawn. But from the bush across roads there on to Killyman, it's real good lawn. It's dry, sandy lawn. And like you never would see water lying on. But here, if it was a wet night, you couldn't go onto it, the lawn here. More, it's good grazing lawn and good cropping lawn and all that. But it doesn't suit wet weather.
It's very fertile land here, and there's great streams, but again, some of them are polluted. And there used to be more birds in the sky, you know, and great geese going over in the winter time.
Well, it has changed a lot, and I have noticed that change over the years, and there's a lot of intensive farming nowadays compared to what there was in the 60s, you know, whenever I was growing up. And to be quite honest, I think it has ruined the landscape, because down below the house here we had wetland meadows, and you know, in May time they were full of lilies, and all throughout the summer it was a never-changing carpet of colour, because you had all the wild flowers, and in the winter time the meadows would flood. Now I know Robert is probably right in doing what he did and in draining all those meadows, because it gives him more usable farmland, but at the same time, from an artist's point of view, it has destroyed the countryside. I remember hearing corn cricks here years and years ago, and there was pheasants and all types of wild birds and insects, but those have all gone now. And you look down to those meadows at the bottom of the field there now, and every field is exactly the same colour, it's all green, and everything is very controlled and very managed. But years ago, whenever I was a child, that was like a wonderland. It was like something from another country. You know, it was the colour was fantastic. I used to go down there with my granny, my father's mother, and would walk along the meadows in the summertime, and it was like something from a Tom Sawyer film or a Huckleberry Finn movie, you know, along the riverbank and the bulrushes and, you know, all the lilies and weeds. And that type of thing was inspiring me all the time to want to paint that colour and that variety of shapes and contrasts and tones.
I think the day of the small farmer is nearly coming to an end. There seem to be, you'd be talking about big units, more or less, not comparing one to the other, compare the supermarket with the shop. I think that's going to be the end of the small farmer.
Well, as I say, the changes that I've seen, the small farms have got bigger, and it's even this day that's growing at a more rapid pace. Like there's no room for the small man now. He's definitely getting squeezed out. And sometimes, in fact, what I'm doing here, if I hadn't my full-time job, I couldn't exist on. As I say, my dad reared 4 of us and reared as well on 45 acres. I now have 66 acres, and there's no way I would dream of staying at home to work full-time. It just wouldn't add up. And only the thing runs in my blood, as I said before. If I had any wit, I would probably quit and take a better time to myself and set the land. But then if everybody did that, it's not going to work either. And I look on my farming at the minute as a hobby rather than as a way of making money. At a time it did make money, but at the minute it's sort of no more than washing his face. It's like backing horses, you live and hope for better times.
Well, what the disadvantages be? Plenty of hard work and very little return for it, that has to be. If it wasn't, you know, if it wasn't for a way of life, there's no question about it. Like the farms in the country, like they wouldn't be functioning at the minute at all. Like the derelict.
Talking to people about it, they are very pessimistic about how things are going to be in the next generation. They're actively discouraging their children from going into farming. I'm sure you've found that out from the other people you've talked to, and that is worrying. I mean, that is terribly worrying, because you know, you just don't know what what else they're going to do. Where are people going to go? Are they going to leave this area? Are they going to sell up their farms? If so, who are they going to sell their farms to? What will the land be used for? I mean, they can't just let it lie. There's going to have to be some huge changes, and yet I don't suppose anybody can really at this moment in time predict. But it would be terribly sad if it did. I just hope that they manage to find other ways of making a living on the land, other than what they're having to do at the moment. So.
I've always heard it said that if the farmer's not doing well, that nobody else is doing well, because a farmer, when he makes a pound, he's the guy that'll spend it again, and it just keeps the whole economy ticking. And a lot of the machinery people, the tractor people, they're all crying at the minute because the farmer he's not having the income to go and spend again. He probably owes the bank man a few pound, and that comes first, and the amount of money that's been ploughed back in at the minute is infinitesimal, it's small, and that's having an effect on the whole community right down. And the community, it's the factories and the milk, like Killyman Creamery's closed, and the nearest one now is Cookstown, and after that is Acher.
I think in the past we got spoiled somewhat in that we believe, like farmers everywhere else in the world, that we're owed a living. Unfortunately, the world has changed, and we're not owed that right.
One of my great theories is the farmer has to pay what he's asked and take what he gets. And farmers are gradually getting themselves conformed into groups for to buy product. And the bigger the group, the more clout they have, and they can talk the price down. But I reckon until they get themselves into groups to sell their produce. Like, as far as I'm concerned, the livestock has been produced for the food sector. There's enough piece of cake there for everybody to get a fair share, but if the meat plants and the supermarkets take off the big slices of the cake, then there's nothing left for the farmer, and the farmer's gradually been driven out of business. And at some day, it's all right nice now, they can import this stuff from the continent and worldwide whenever the pound is strong, but what will happen when the pound goes the other way? They'll want our produce, and I can see that there'll be very little people there to produce it.
Where farming has changed to is that it has changed to more like any commercial or industrial business. If you don't have a need or a customer for what you're producing or what you're wanting to do, no one is going to keep you in that business. And we grew up in an era where it was felt it was the right or the obligation of the government to protect us and support us and to keep us in business. I think that era has disappeared, and it's a cold, hard world, and we all want to think that we can survive in it. We all may not, and it's the same in other parts of the world as well, that it's cruel.
What becomes of our lovely country if the farming people are bankrupted and have to walk away and live on the outskirts of towns and do other jobs? They're not there looking after this and managing to make some kind of a living out of it. What will become of it? Are government going to pay for that? That will be a lot more expensive than a productive agriculture.
Well, I heard somebody say one time that it's topsy-turvy. The roads were made to bring the produce out to the farms and the fairs. Now the roads are left there to dump things on us in local areas, like, so that the farm is just at the bottom of the heap of alienation, I think. Like, we're alienated from Brussels and from the West, in villages now, and the farmers, I think, even more alienated. And I doubt they're having a hard time at the moment.
Our government has worked for this, MAF has worked for this outbreak. They have set it up. There's no question. Bringing in beef from anywhere in the world. As long as it's cheap. Where foot and mouth is prevalent high, they don't even try to control it.
I think that should never be underestimated, the extent to which farmers as individuals feel themselves sort of one against the world, and it has possibly generated some of the social problems that we know exist, of depression and even worse in some cases in among farming people. They do feel isolated, and even though they aren't, they feel like that. They have various avenues such as trading in animals, etc., which bring them that sense of community and togetherness with others in the same field. But the opportunities are relatively few, and that is a problem for them.
You're on with farmers now meeting. Mostly marts, livestock marts, places like that is where you get farmers meeting. There's very few other places that farmers do meet. And the whole thing's that busy now, and they have to go that hard. To get the work done and get like a pound out of it, that there's only whenever out in the day like that they would meet and talk. And you know, the years gone by, you'd have met around thrashers, not on a talk, and there'd been crack around thrashers, but that days away, it's like me in that field now, my own day, mowing the grass, there's not a creature to talk to, and all else, you're on your own. Most of these jobs are all the same nowadays.
Well, to me, the only place that seems to throw the crowd is down around the football field. It seems to be the best place for the lads to gather and meet before they'd go out for the night. And in this playing football, or there was ones there's still somebody about.
Apart from the church, the other main uniting group in the parish would be the football team. Killyman football team, who have their own pitch, their own hall, their own dressing rooms, and that is where most of the people would meet for social occasions in the parish.
As you get a bit older and got a bit more responsibility, then the football seemed to be time. It was time to relax. You got away from the farming and you went to football matches and you played football, and it still was something different, something to talk about.
Well, the football club really is a focal point for the local community. There isn't very much really in this area to sort of bring the people together, and the football club has brought people together, not only those who play football, but also any sort of sports days or other sort of functions that we would have on the club. It brings people who maybe wouldn't have maybe a sporting outlook on life, brings them together. So the club has been a sort of a focal point for the local, I suppose you could say, Catholic community.
I suppose there would be under 100 families in our community, and the majority of them would be all focused around the football club. The community centre here is on the same premises here, and it brings the community together. The football club would be the main focal point in our community, and it sort of gels the families together.
Well, I suppose maybe I was there whenever the team started, and that's 35, 36 years ago. I started off, I was treasurer, and between treasurer and assistant treasurer, I'm there since.
You know, everybody has their own ideas and what they want to what they want to do with their lives and what they want to follow. You know, Gaelic football to me would be a big part of my life and my family, and I hope it always will be.
I think there is a great deal of change in the farming world, and I doubt, I don't think many of the sons will become farmers. So it's passing into something else. These farms that you see now are factory farms now. They've got so large, and they're going to be subject to the ups and downs of economics. It's not a way of life anymore. Sad to say.
Farming could be a dying trade. There's a lot of young generation not following it up. The young ones don't seem to be following what their fathers have done. A lot of them, some of them maybe, but a lot of them not. And I think that part of the reason is too, unless you're in a very, very big way going, there wouldn't be enough money in it for it. There's a lot of young fellas now out doing a job on part-time farming.
If the like of us worked in any like in any other industry, like in what capital's involved, like in ours, we wouldn't be getting within. We wouldn't have 20% like of the return you'd find in all the businesses. That's why I say it's just the way of life.
My two boys are working to say they've no interest in the farm whatsoever. They're out working, and I don't know what way things will end up, you know. I'm sure the other ones are living in towns when they're townies, and they might come out to the countryside as they get older, you know. I just don't really know.
But I say that the children now that's leaving the school and going on to the farm, I wouldn't advise them. No. There'll be no outlook. No outlook at the present minute. Going on to the farm, leaving school, say for taking up some profession. Yes.
I think there's only about 3 of us around, around my age group, who I suppose are left farming. Out of about 10 farms, there's probably about 3 of us has come home to farm. The other fellas have enough and got jobs. Let it be went on to university and went across the mainland or are currently in work here. But I suppose the bigger farms are inclined to get bigger, and the smaller farms are. Well, I wouldn't say they're getting smaller, but they're falling into more of a part-time basis,
More and more young people, I am told, and farmers have told me that their sons are saying, no, I'm not going to go on with this, it's too difficult. There's been this huge drop in farming income during the recent crisis, notably BSE. If Northern Ireland doesn't export its products, it simply won't survive as an agricultural entity, and this is all very off-putting to younger people.
The days of getting work out of children's sort of gone, and then education, what they want is education now, you see, and try and look better jobs. And the work mightn't be there for them either, whenever they get this done too.
Some of the architects that work in these areas don't have the sensitivity that's required. They don't appreciate what the value of the area is, so it's very important that people who are born there, educated there, go away and learn what they can, but also bring back what they've learned to the area.
with living in the country and very little, you know, to do, I spent a lot of time on my art, and I just developed it myself. And well, I had a lot of encouragement from my mother and father as well, and just kept on at it. How I actually started glass, there was a man who had seen my drawings and just had asked me to start with him, and I'd never any intentions of ever going into the glass area, but from I went into it I haven't left it. I just love working on glass. It's a great product to work on. Over the last 5 years, the business has got stronger, and I would hope to do as well in the next 5 years and definitely have more employees. The business is definitely growing for me at the minute. Well, I suppose the largest piece that we've been asked to do is probably bar work. We do Budweiser, we do Guinness, and those tend to be very big pieces. We did a stand there for Budweiser. The Budweiser one would have taken an artwork at least, I'd say, 50, 60 hours to do the artwork on it. It's very, very time consuming.
I think the people here, there's always a great sense of humour.
We're talking back to the drums. This fella used to ask me to get him a bottle of potting for the drum head. It's supposed to be a good thing for the drum head. I would get it for him, and if I laughed at beating, well, what about the drop of potting? He says, the best I've ever tasted. That was the drum head you had it for.
You get that in everyone you meet around this area. Everybody, you know, they're talkative. No doubt about that. Nobody will pass you by, you know, if you're out walking the dog or whatever, which is about the only walking I do. People are honest, you know. People will tell you what to think, so which I always admire in people. I think I try to do that myself. I suppose down to earth. There's not too many people around here where ours are graces, probably to do with the honesty of the people as well, because you'll not get carried away. People will let you know. So if you can pick out those words in that ramble there, I suppose honest, talkative, down to earth, and sense of humour, that's what people have from around here.
I remember there was one particular character, Nicky McCreely, and I've no bother mentioning his name, but he was a demon, and probably a great man, you know, but to a kid of 10 or 11 years of age, Nicky was the devil himself. And I remember whenever he used to have potatoes, or he would do a wee bit of market gardening and that, you know, and he would be looking kids to gather the potatoes for him in the autumn time, just around now, and he'd come round the houses, you know, and he'd have said, "Young Kavanagh, I want you to gather them spuds or I'll kill you." And as far as we were concerned, he meant it, you know, and he had this life terrified out of all the kids. He terrified all the kids in the country. And I remember he used to have this habit of hiding behind a hedge whenever we used to have cows down at home, and if you had too much milk, you'd have put some in a saucepan and brought it round the neighbours, you know, who wouldn't have had a cow. And you'd be carrying this milk in a saucepan every Saturday night, or maybe 3 nights a week, around the neighbourhood. And Nicky used to hide behind a hedge, and he'd be waiting on you. And whenever you'd come, he'd jump out, you see, and he'd grab you. And I was going down, it was just the turn of the evenings, you know, and it was getting dark, and I was going down the road one evening, and I was convinced that Nicky was going to be somewhere to jump out. And I thought to myself, now if he jumps out on me, I'll throw this milk round him. And I had myself built up that much that I got down past Fitzgerald's house, and Nicky came out from behind the hedge, and I just emptied the gallon of milk round him and ran like hell, because if he'd have got me, he would have killed me. And like, that wasn't something you did in those days.
I have another good story about the story list about the man who played the organ in this church, Harvey Moore. He's a neighbour of ours at home, and for years Harvey played the organ here. And again, I thought there was something mysterious about somebody that could, you know, play the music in a church. And one time during the Troubles, I went to visit Harvey and his wife. And I said to her, isn't it a terrible thing, you and I living beside each other here, and you work in your church and I work in my church, and there's such trouble going on here in Northern Ireland. And Harvey's wife said to me something I thought was wonderful. I said, have we any solution between the two of us? And she said, if we'd put God first and our neighbours second and ourselves last, we'd soon get over the troubles here in Northern Ireland. So I will tell that little story in tribute to Mrs. Moore.
You know, when we were small, we knew everybody for miles. At the minute, we know quite a few within a radius. When you look at the troubles in Northern Ireland, and you know, it doesn't happen in the country the way it does. People are not cutting others' throats the way they do in the cities, and you know, it's a happy family life. And as I say, for miles around, you know everyone, and everybody gets on fine. That's the values of rural life that I would. And if you're in any problems, your neighbour will swim in and help you, and it's a good two-way exercise.
Well, I don't really see very much changes in the community of Killyman. They're kind of people, like, I have travelled all Ireland, and I've only given an opinion about people of Killyman, and there seem to be people that get on very well together and never no trouble or bother, and the people are very agreeable. I don't see very much change in the community this last 20 years, in my opinion. Like, everybody gets on well together and no trouble. I have worked in Belfast and I've worked around all them areas, and I would appreciate at night to come home to such an area as Killyman and to see what's going on in other areas, and the attitude and the way people are like. That doesn't apply to around our area, and I would always be glad to come home to it.
Killyman would be a very close-knit community. Some people would say maybe a clannish, but sure, most communities are probably always the same. But I would like to think we're very warm and open, and that even outsiders and new people that do come in our community are all made very welcome.
I think the other thing about the rural community of Killyman is because the various cultures and religions and social aspects are mixed, that helps people to grow up in an environment where there is less discrimination, you know, at both the normal, the traditional Irish one of religion, but also social discrimination, that you're living in communities that have a complete range of levels of social and economic levels, and I think that's good to be growing up in that, and not in a little enclave of people that are just like you.
Beauty. I think beauty is a word that comes to my mind. Simply, as you maybe see in the surroundings here, you know, there's a great beauty, and also a beauty in the people themselves. And as I've spoken of, the openness that people have.
I'm again going to quote from an old railway man. He said that he had travelled around most of Ireland as an employee of the Great Northern Railway. But he said when he came here to Troonmoy, he found that the people of Killyman were the most benevolent people that he had ever met. And that's the words I would say, most benevolent people you'll ever meet.
I'm a son of the land. So my father farmed in County Donegal, So I grew up in South County Donegal on a farm and spent my time in the summers at the hay or at the turf in the bog, and the winters feeding the cattle and one thing and another. So I'm steeped in a farming background, and I would consider my present job to be also in a sense a pastoral job, and that it's similar, but not in all ways, but similar to a farming job.
I'm always glad to come out here on a Sunday morning and say Mass, because you come out afterwards and people are standing around the church gate. That is a very old Irish custom, this gathering around the church gate on a Sunday, and unfortunately you don't see it to the same extent nowadays. Certainly not in the towns. People get out and get into their cars and they're off. You come out here in Killyman, they're standing round, the men in one group, the women in another group. The men, of course, probably discussing football. I don't know what the women discuss, but it's great to see it, that social gathering outside the church. It's something that has gone from the towns, unfortunately.
We're brought up to go to the chapel, and we still go to the chapel, and that's just as far as we go. I suppose it's more a tradition than anything else. You could see numbers drop on there on a Sunday there, you could see the numbers dropping, but as young people mature, I suppose they'll come back. They're brought up with it, and that's it.
Killyman had an old history, I think, as possibly it meant it's an old church setting, you know, obviously it goes back. And there is a trick about life that the history comes back on us, you know, so perhaps I wouldn't say it couldn't become that. But yes, anywhere could become a place of finding your soul if we stepped up on the boundary fences and talked to the neighbour that's gone past. If you could slow him down.
Well, we definitely do. This church means an awful lot to our family. There have been marriages and christenings in this church, and it's just very nice and close-knit for us.
I met my husband on a blind date, believe it or not. I suppose it's near 35 years ago. I met him on a blind date. Love at first sight. And we started going out together, and we went for 4 years, and then we got married. And I have 5 children, 2 girls and 3 boys. And 5 grandsons. And I'm very happy married. And I love living here. It's great. I get up at 7, Dermot gets up at 6:45, and I get up at 7. And he comes in, it was maybe 9, maybe half 9 at night before he comes in, depending on what he has to do. And it's a long day now. It's a long day for him, not so much for me, but for him it's a long day. Oh, definitely, I do. I stand by him and what he does. I help him, even though it's, when the plate I give him a hand with those. Nothing to do with cows or anything like that now, I said, I'm behind Dermot 100%.
I went to work for the National Trust as a guide, and that's in 1986. And I'm there ever since. I guide and I do education guiding, which is going down the road of living history, which is speaking in present tense, and it does come second nature after a while. I also got another job with the National Trust, conservation assistant. I do 20 hours in the house, and that takes me out as well. I suppose a farmhouse is not a normal house because it's your business, your office, your canteen, everything. It's also your home, and it is hard in a way sometimes to cope with both, but the advantages outweigh the disadvantages, so I'm still out there too.
One of the cheap ones that time you get it for half a crown or so. And she stopped with me. And that time you see they're going up tight, you want them up tight. And I didn't know that. They say you have to let them down before you start to take the inside out. So I screwed the back out of her anyway, and the whole wheels and all flew around me. And I've actually got them all anyway. Got her built up again and got her going. So that's what started me off and working at that. Well, I tell you what speaks to me, getting them fixed. Once I get a clock fixed, well, I'm over the moon.
Bertie, that's a cousin of mine. He was killed at Arnhem. He was in the paratroops. And he's buried at Arnhem. That's the band then took his name. Sergeant White Memorial. He had lived at our house at home before he joined the army. He was in the army he had 7 years done just for retiring out of it whenever the war started, and then he had to go on ahead in it. He had his time done.
Sass left here one 12th of July morning. He came back in band practice time and mate time, and he said, "Where's my flute?" He said, "I left it behind the wall last 12th of July, and it should still be there." There was no flute.
Did not see me get my 50-year certificate. 50 years, that's a long time. But to look back, it's nothing. And to look forward to 50 years, if I told you in 50 years' time, you'd say, you'd never see it. You know this. But to look back, and it's nothing. It's only a short time. 50 years.
Brother,
55 years or something.
Yeah, yes, exactly, yeah. 55.
I wish you long spared to walk another 50 years with the bush.
Oh, I doubt it very much. Very good. Thank you very much. I'll speech at the next 50 years.
I would like to see, more people coming together and realising that it doesn't matter what building you go into on a Sunday. It's, there's so much more in common that people here have than what people think divides them. They're really, we're all very similar people. I'd just like to see, I suppose I would like to see people continuing to live here as well. I wouldn't like to see there being a sort of diminution in terms of the population, but I think you see the new houses popping up, so it seems to be a growing area, which is good. Again, I wouldn't like it, having said that, I wouldn't like to see it become overpopulated, because it's a nice sort of balance. We're out in the country, but we're not too far from the town.
Most people now are setting their land and they don't want farming anymore. They listen to too much television and talks about farming and things and how bad it is, and you have to be in it till you have to be interested in it. I keep going on ahead. Doesn't matter how bad the thing gets. I still keep going on ahead, and I don't listen to anything like that. I just do my own dues. And terrible people advising me to take it easy and get rid of the cattle and all and anything like this, but I don't listen. I close a blind eye to that.
Very healthy life. It might be a wealthy life, but it's a healthy life.